And so am I on here? 1, 2, 3. Yep, you can hear me. I'm Steve Clemons of Singapore. Ambassador, it's great to see you. I'm just start out a little differently here. I'm just interested, so I want to pay respect to anyone near or over 100 years old. Anyone? Anyone? Well, we had oh, you're joking. This is a serious matter because there's some breaking news. Because Henry Kissinger was reported to have gone to China. It's a long trip, and the 100-year-old diplomat Henry Kissinger is in China. Breaking news. Would love to hear, how did his trip go? Has he solved things in America? I mean, is there any breaking news that you can share with us about solving any of the problems that China and the United States have?
Well, I think it's a good occasion to pay our respect to Dr. Kissinger again. This year, he is 100 years old. And he has not only been I think first of all, he is a patriotic American citizen. He cares for American interests. But I think it's also wise for him to realize that a sound and stable Sino-US relations is in the interest not only of China, but also the United States. So that is why the first American friend I paid my courtesy to is Dr. Kissinger. Oh. I visited his home in Hartford, and afterwards I also hosted a dinner in honor of his centenary birthday. So now he is in Beijing, and he will be meeting with the Chinese leaders. And I think the message from this visit is that a Sino-US relations is so important that we simply cannot let it fail. And that is the responsibility of our two countries to work together to bring this relationship back to the right track.
Well, we know he met Wang Yi. We know he met the defense minister, who we have not had a lot of meetings with the defense. Any chance he met Qin Gang, the foreign minister?
Well, let's wait and see.
Any more? No.
Yes, there will be more. I think there will be other Chinese leaders who will be meeting with Dr. Kissinger.
Well, we will do this. We are interested in the former foreign minister, well, I shouldn't say former, the current foreign minister, the previous ambassador. He spoke on this stage last year. Ed Luce interviewed him, and just would love to hear how he is. And so I thought maybe he was doing secret diplomacy and Henry Kissinger was over engaged with Qin Gang, but that hasn't come out yet. So if that has happened, I hope you'll give me the scoop.
Well, the foreign ministry spokesman have already briefed the media on this. So I thank you for your care.
Okay, great. So let me ask you, Ambassador, you're here, and I'm interested in why, given, I mean, the U.S. China relations, as you know, is in a bit of trouble. It's a portfolio that's going to require a lot of work. I'm not sure why you wanted to come here. What is your agenda as you see it? As you diagnosed U.S. China relations, what's good, what's not good from your perspective, and what are you going to try and fix?
Well, this is, frankly speaking, a difficult time for China-US relations. But as a diplomat, I have to, follow the instruction of my leaders, as well as my government, to do the job that is needed to be done. So I came here. On the one hand, as the Chinese representative, I'm here to safeguard China's interests. But on the other hand, as the representative of the Chinese people, I'm coming here also to enhance communication and cooperation between China and the United States. And this is also my important mission. Sino-US relations is facing serious difficulties and challenges. Recently, since my arrival, I have noticed there have been reflections on the US side on its China policy. In the previous weeks, there have been a series of high-level exchanges between China and the United States. And they proved to be in-depth, candid, and constructive. I think the most important thing out of these visits is that both sides agreed we should implement the important common understanding reached between the two presidents in Bali. I think that this is a good sign. This provides a rare opportunity, but the challenges are still abound and the foundations are still fragile. So we need to keep up and also to sustain this good momentum.
So you had Secretary of State Blinken, who will be here this week. You had Secretary of Treasury Yellen, who will not. We've had John Kerry over. Now we can't count him as an official, but of course Henry Kissinger. So there's a stream of people going over. Who's next?
Well, right now, Kerry, the presidential special envoy, is in Beijing. And Secretary Raimondo has also expressed a wish to go to China. So we welcome more American officials, as well as people from the business, from the students, scholars,
Right.
Even tourists. We welcome. We embrace you to visit China.
So do you look at Secretary Raimondo? We were just talking to her earlier, or not talking to her, but about her earlier in a session about chips with the CEO of Intel and the previous Secretary of Commerce, Penny Pritzker. And we were talking about a kind of technology war with China and whether we're in that or not. Both of them said no, but they said the challenge is very severe. Do you look at Gina Raimondo as an economic official, or do you look at her as a national security military official?
Well, that question has to be determined by the U.S. side, not by me, But frankly speaking, China is opposed to any kind of trade war, technological war under the pretext of competition. China do not shy away from competition, but the definition of competition by the U.S. side, I think is not fair. Well, first of all, United States is trying to win by keeping China out. For instance, Huawei was banned, even though this company has come up with a agreement to have no security, to have no backdoor. So how can you imagine a competition without one side even on the ground? And secondly, I think the United States is rallying allies to encircle China. This is not in conformity with the one-on-one game rule.
So you feel encircled?
Of course, this is the fact. This is the fact. And thirdly, I think United States is restricting or prohibiting China importing equipments to build chips, which are smaller than 14 nanometers. I think this is like restricting the other side to wear outdated swimwear in a swimming contest, while you yourself is wearing a Speedo, fast skin. So this is not fair.
I am, just for the record, very comfortable with outdated swimwear. In this, but it is interesting metaphor. But I mean, China, however, in response to some of these, you banned Micron Technologies from your national security architecture. You've also restricted export of 2 metals. Are we at the beginning of an escalatory tit for tat? From your perspective, that you're now sending a signal that you're not going to take it anymore, and you're going to go and begin restricting technologies and materials that the United States needs?
Well, you see, up till now, 1,300 more Chinese entities or personnel have been on the U.S. sanction list. And these people were forced out of job, and their families suffered greatly. And we have been, it has been reported that the U.S. side is also considering, having a outbound investment review mechanism, as well as further, prohibition on the export of AI chips to China. So these, the Chinese people cannot remain silent, and Chinese government cannot simply sit idly by. In Chinese saying, there's a Chinese saying that we will not, make provocations, but we will not flinch from provocations. So China definitely, will make our response, but definitely it's not our hope to have a tit for tat. We don't want, trade war, technological war. We want to say goodbye to the Iron Curtain as well as the Silicon Curtain.
Do you think Americans you're meeting with are getting that message? You were at the Pentagon recently. I don't know if you've have met Representative Mike Gallagher, of the chair of the Select Committee on China, but are you sensing that that message that you're sharing with us, do they believe you?
Well, I have not met with the representative yet, but I'm trying my best to engage with the American public. And the reason why I come here to attend this forum,
I think they're
simply
watching.
to speak out.
I think they're watching, by the way. I think the committee is definitely watching. So
thank you.
You want to say hello to Mike Gallagher?
I would like to express my thanks again to the forum for inviting me.
Right.
And thank you for talking to me.
But in this portfolio of your job and whatever, I reached out. I basically talked to a couple of folks I really respect in the broad foreign policy establishment, but I also got a couple of quotes. I just want to read them real quickly, because I think you have a bitch of a job coming up. and so one of these very senior U.S. officials, I don't want to name, but in the Biden White House, they basically believe, listen, Steve, don't have any illusions. China has a long-term plan to displace America as the global hegemonic power and replace that displacement with its own role and influence. That's one. If you listen to Mike Gallagher, he says the greatest threat to the United States is the Chinese Communist Party. The CCP continues to commit genocide, obscure the origins of the coronavirus pandemic, steal hundreds of billions of dollars worth of American intellectual property, and threaten Taiwan, etc. Kevin McCarthy said to win the new Cold War, he calls it a new Cold War, we must respond to Chinese aggression with tough policies to strengthen our economy, rebuild our supply chains, speak out for human rights, stand against military aggression, and end the theft of America's personal information. These are very tough words. And then a different official said, Xie Feng is the right person at the right time to be China's ambassador in Washington. I think he will be able to communicate in hopefully an effective manner, both in the nation's capital and more broadly, while of course representing President Xi in China. We certainly need that, as you so well understand. I'll just say that is a very, very important too. There is not a consensus per se around. There's a lot of toxicity. So you're going to have to be dealing with this. So when you hear those kinds of comments from senior government officials, what is your path for success?
Well, to follow the question you raised just now, whether my voice has been heard by the general public. You see, since my arrival, I have a perception that a little bit surprising to me of this so-called political correctness in the U.S. society. I have been talking to as many American friends as possible. I think there are still a large number of supporters for this relationship, but they seem to be under pressure, and they seem to be reticent under the recent, chilling effect, and they tend to restrain from making their views, out. Under the so-called anti-China chorus. An American netizen commented on my Twitter saying that I hope you find some allies. There are some hiding in the darkness, afraid of being crushed. So one of my job here, I think, is to seek them out. I am one, but we are many. So I hope that all of you will join hands with me to seek them out and to contribute together to this relationship. Now, coming back to your previous question, Chinese people, I think, are the most friendly people in the world. And aggressiveness or assertiveness is not our tradition. And invasion or the pursuit of hegemony definitely is not our DNA. When President Xi Jinping met with Secretary Blinken about 2 weeks ago, our president said emphatically that China and the world is big enough to let China and the United States develop respectively and also to prosper together. China do not challenge United States or try to displace United States. Instead of outcompeting others, China is now focusing on outdoing ourselves. We have a long way to go, and we want to build the prosperity pie even bigger and also divide them fairly.
Right.
So it's an uphill, battle for us. So no one is more eager than China to see a stable, healthy relationship between China and the United States.
So how do you get there? So Wang Yi is in the news a lot because he's doing two jobs. You're the head of the CCP's Foreign Committee and then Foreign Affairs Committee, and also really acting in the role of Foreign Minister for the moment. And he said that no one can transform China. And he says, more importantly, absolutely no one can contain China, that both of those would be there. But I think a lot of the concern about so-called transforming China is the difference between China and the U.S. on dealing with human rights. Or how Brad Smith of Microsoft is here, wrote a book on tools and weapons about how China deploys facial recognition software and how. I'm interested in how and whether on these big issues that a lot of people in the world care about, AI, the coming use of quantum technology, but also human rights, how we can solve those tensions in a way that's not considered transforming, even though the United States wants to see transformation.
Well, China has been engaging with the United States and other countries, in dialogues on AI, on human rights, on a very broad range of issues. But of course, China and the United States are two different nations with very different cultural background and historical background. So we cannot see eye to eye, on everything, just like each individual cannot see, eye to eye on every issue. But our position is that we should seek common grounds while sharing differences. And mutual respect is very important. So China is, take the example of human rights. China now is promoting the so-called whole process, people's democracy. That is, you see, rose is beautiful not because of the name, because of the smell, And the democracy should not be as a slogan. It should deliver. We think that if a democracy process that have the widest participation, it can deliver outcomes, that is to improve people's lives. And if finally it can get the approval of the people, then this is good democracy. From the previous dozens of years, Edelman and Harvard University conducted, opinion poll in China, and the approval rate for the Chinese government has always been over 90%. So I think this is very convincing.
You just made Richard Edelman's day. Let me read something here. It's in today's Financial Times by Edward Luce, who's in the hall. And he wrote, the challenge for the West is in forging a common front on China without it spilling over into direct confrontation. Unlike the war in Ukraine, which must eventually reach some kind of messy conclusion, the rivalry between the US and China is a project without end. For the purposes of strategic planners, it offers no natural conclusion. This is where history ceases to offer much guidance. Short of Armageddon, there's no scenario in which either the US or China will emerge as the world's sole hegemon. It's a really thoughtful paragraph in Ed's piece, but it made me think about something you and I have talked about before. And Anya Manuel, the director of the Aspen Security Forum, mentioned yesterday, is there any room for a cooperation agenda? Is there any area that you can encircle where the circles come over and you can more robustly grab a cooperation agenda, and what would be in it?
Well, for China-US relations looking forward, I think three priorities essential. One is to shorten the negative list.
Shorten the what?
Shorten the negative list, to clear the obstacles and manage the differences. For example, the Taiwan question, which is so important, so sensitive, we should, taken care of it in accordance with the three joint communiques.
When do you think
United
you're
States
going
should
to
take the China's entities and the personnel, out of the sanction list?
Right.
And the President Biden have been saying that United States do not seek Taiwan independence. It does not want to decouple with China. It does not want to stall China's economic development. And it does not seek to change China's system. We hope that the United States
Do you
will
believe? Do
implement
you believe the president?
They will translate these statements into concrete actions. So this is number one. The second category, I think we also have to expand the positive agenda. I think there are a lot of areas, that we can cooperate, including, the AI, quantum, whatever, But I know now is a difficult time, so why don't we start with some concrete, small steps? For example, to increase passenger flights, to adjust the China travel advisory, to renew the cooperation agreement on science and technology, to restart the MECA program, which will facilitate more congressmen and senators, as well as their staff members, to visit China. Why don't we hold the tourism leadership forum so as to attract tourists from both countries to visit each other? And the last but not least, I think we should do something to facilitate the visa application as well as the border entry for businessmen, for scholars, for students, and for tourists. So these are easy things I think we can do right away. As I remember in the before 2017, China and the United States used to have more than 100, almost 200 dialogue mechanisms, but they have been stalled by the U.S. side since 2018. I think the two sides have waited too long. Why don't we start renewing them? If not all, then starting from 50 or 30. I think that is possible. And the last one is the one I said just now, to seek out supporters to create an environment for a healthy development of our bilateral relations.
On the climate front, what do you think John Kerry will achieve in China? And do you have any criticisms for the United States' role on climate today?
Climate change is another area. China and the United States have great potential to work together. If you look back, the Paris Agreement.
Do you think that China is doing so much? I mean, I'm actually pretty well read into China's growth and on a lot of fronts, carbon. There's no doubt in those areas, but also in dealing with climate remediation or carbon remediation in a lot of areas. Do you think the United States is living up to its goals on climate change today?
Well, first of all, great potential for China and the United States to work together in this area. Secondly, I think we should still, stick to the principle of common, responsibility, common but differentiated responsibility. And thirdly, you should implement what you have, committed up to now. For example, the developed countries have committed themselves to providing assistance to developed countries. So we are waiting that to be done with real actions. Coming back to the question you just raised now, China definitely do not seek hegemony, and we don't want to have conflict with the United States. As I said, we do not want to challenge the United States or displace the United States. We want to grow together with the United States. So I think the Thucydides, trap is not inevitable. It's not inevitable. And that is why I think we should say goodbye, because the world has changed. Now we have to look beyond. We should say goodbye
Right.
to the Cold War mentality. We
Right.
should say goodbye to the bloc confrontation. We should say goodbye to the zero-sum game, and we should bring about. We should, avoid a major country conflict. I once remembered, an American friend asked me, "What kind of flower will grow out of China?" And my answer is, it will be a flower of peace, a flower of cooperation, a flower of common, development.
Right.
It will be a Chinese peony,
Right.
as
Chinese peony.
as as beautiful, as sweet as American roses.
I think that's a tweetable moment. We only have 3 minutes. I want to do lightning round with you. In talking about what China wants to become and how it's evolving, one of the features that we've all been surprised, we woke up one day and saw that China had negotiated normalization between the Saudis and Iranians. What's next? I mean, the fact that you're doing it, if you can give me a short answer here, but it's a different behavior. We didn't see China doing that kind of role. Should we expect more? Is Israel-Palestine next?
Well, China, the purpose of China facilitating for the reestablishment of diplomatic relations between the two countries is simply to encourage more countries in the region to embrace peace, to shake hands. So I'm very glad to see that Palestine is following.
Yeah.
We hope that China will not only do this in the Middle East, but also in other areas. We think that as China develop into a economically more vibrant, country, then China should contribute more to world peace and development.
You have a relationship without end with Russia. God, I can't believe we have 2.5 minutes. What are the Vladimir Putin's redeeming qualities as you see them?
Well, as diplomats, we conduct our foreign relations, on our respective national interests. I have not met with President Putin personally. I still remember President,
So
Bush.
you might still
I
not
still
like
remember
him.
when I
Yeah.
was working here for the first time.
Right.
President Bush Jr.
Right.
said that he looked into the eyes of Mr. Putin.
Saw his soul.
He saw his soul. He is reliable,
Yeah.
But this doesn't. China, Russia have as two big, neighbors. We have more than 4,000 kilometers of border. So it's only natural for us
Right.
to maintain
You
good
care-
neighborly relations.
China cares about its borders and China cares about sovereignty. Do you believe Ukraine has a legitimate case fighting back against Russia because its sovereign lines as recognized by them? I mean, you had an embassy there. I mean, do you recognize that? And what can China do to help solve this horrible mess?
Well, to finish the
Yeah,
previous
okay.
question, it's only natural for China and Russia to maintain normal, friendly, neighborly
Right.
relations, and also to engage with each other in legitimate, trade. But China, since the breakout of the Ukrainian crisis, we have been openly and repeatedly our position. We we stand for the safeguarding of national for sovereignty and territorial integrity. This is number one. And secondly, we are also asking for, the respect to the legitimate and reasonable, security concern.
Lastly, I want to come back to Taiwan. I'm interested in what your red lines are. There's now a discussion of another pass-through situation, but we see a quote out there that appeared in the Financial Times today, in fact, about a potential front runner in Taiwan's race saying their job will be done when they're able to go by invitation into the White House. Is that a red line? Is that the same for you as Taiwan declaring independence? Because I asked this, because yesterday there was a very, very good interview with Admiral John Aquilino with my colleague and, journalistic colleague Courtney Kuby about Taiwan, and he said, look, U.S. policy has not changed. The Taiwan Relations Act, the 6 reassurances are there, the 3 communiques, and so there's been no change. But my question to you is, what are the red lines that would make you not believe President Biden and the administration that policy had not changed? Would it be an invitation to the White House?
Well, talking about Taiwan, I think the first and foremost thing that we should bear in mind is that Taiwan is China's Taiwan. It's part of China. It's an alienable part of China. So I think no one is more eager or sincere than China to see a peaceful solution, to see the peace and stability along the Taiwan Straits to continue, and also to see a peaceful reunification of China. Now, the 2 imposing threats to them, on the one hand, is the Taiwan separatists advancing their separatist agenda, seeking U.S. support. They have deviated from their previous position of one China. They even have given up the cross-strait consensus, Singapore consensus. And they have also, they even did not admit they are Chinese. So this is a very dangerous path they are taking. Secondly is the United States playing the Taiwan card to contain China. So these together will embolden the separatists to take adventurous moves. So that is something that we should be guard against. So now I think the most fundamental thing is to return to the one China principle. And the most important thing is that the 3 joint communiques between our 2 countries should be implemented. And thirdly, I think the provocative, adventurous moves by the Taiwan separatists should be contained. And now the priority for us is to stop Lai Ching-te from visiting the United States, which is like a gray rhino charging at us. Thank you.
Final. 50 years until last year, we had pandas in the United States. There are no pandas in the United States. Is that going to be your big peony?
I will do my utmost to do that. And hopefully, here in Aspen, there will also be, one.
Ambassador Xie Feng, I would say this genuinely, that there's people knew you were coming here. I have been talked to by people in this room from all over, everyone. Well, first I want to say, first of all, thank you for taking some tough questions. Thank you as well for your candor. And I think there's no one here that wants to see things go badly, but it's going to require both sides to be introspective and thoughtful. I will tell you that the last line of Ed's really excellent article is that it is a zero-sum game. So they have to prove to him that it's somehow wrong, because right now it has that feel. But I want to say thank you so much.
Thank you. Let us work together to reverse the zero-sum game and to make it into a win-win game. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your hard question.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are now